All right, so it's been a while since I made an updated PKahex with ALM video guide, and a lot of people ask me all the time, like, why hasn't ALM updated? And it has in actuality, just not in the place you're used to looking for. And that's mainly because people have lives. So for this video guide, I'm going to provide you a different method that updates a lot quicker, and hopefully this helps y'all that need to use ALM for whatever. And just want to kind of get this out the way that the people behind PKX and the people behind ALM, they all have lives and they do this completely for free on their own time. So all they ask is for you guys to just be respectful. That's it. So now that we got that out the way, let's go ahead and get to this PKX with ALM guide. All right, so anyone unfamiliar with PKX, PKX is a Pokemon Core Series save file editor. And by Core Series, that means official games. This is not intended to work for ROM hacks, so if you do get a ROM hack to work for it, consider yourself lucky, but that is not the intended goal. An Autolegality mod, or ALM for short, is probably the most popular plugin for PKX. And basically what it does, it takes the information you provide and creates a legal Pokemon from that if possible, but it cannot make the impossible possible. Also, everything I do in this guide does not require a hack switch or hack 3s or any type of hacking software whatsoever. This guide is basically made for the basic user or anyone that is maybe a little bit more advanced to get a basic rundown of PKX as well as ALM. Also, super important, I am making this guide using Windows. If you get this to work for other operating systems, it's possible, but I'm not going to really be of any help because this guide is catered towards use using Windows. Because this is using Windows, you're going to need the latest Microsoft.NET framework. I'm going to have the link to that in the description. Also, super important, and I don't really understand why it causes issues. Please do not have PKHex and ALM underneath OneDrive if you have it operating on your PC or laptop. Something about OneDrive causes PKHex and ALM some issues. So again, please do not have PKHex or ALM operating underneath OneDrive. So now let's go ahead and get started. All right, so now it's time to get everything set up. So go to your desktop or wherever you want to have PKX open from and make a folder and simply title PKHex. Now, inside this folder, you're going to make another folder titled plugins and do that. And now it's time to download the required files. All right, so now it's time to download the plugins, and we're going to be using the SantaCrab 2 version of the plugins, and always make sure that is right here. The link for that is going to be in the description, and you always want to make sure that you download the latest version of the plugins, and it's always going to say so because it's going to say latest. Now, this version of the plugin looks a little weird because it has two different numbers. It has 240603 and HP 240605. Typically, it's going to look like this, and for the next download, it's probably going to look like this for the next update. But the reason why it looks this way right now is because HP basically means hot patch. There was a little mini update, and this is just designed to match up with that and reflect that it was updated for that. But the number that you're paying attention to is 240603, and that needs to match up with your version of PKX. And again, if you watch this video 2 months from now or a month from now, this may be different. All that really matters at that is that you use the latest version. And keep in mind that PKX and ALM do not update instantly. They kind of update maybe every month, maybe every 2 months. You never know. They kind of work at their own time. So just keep that in mind. So go ahead and scroll down to where you see PKX plugins. Go ahead and download that. Now, if you've never downloaded PKX or ALM before, it may get blocked and say it's a virus or something with your firewall. It's not. These are the actual links. I wouldn't post any like viruses or anything like that. But if it gets flagged and you don't trust it, go ahead and stop now and you enjoy the rest of your day. So now we've got that out of the way, we can go ahead and download PKX. So go over here and you're going to see that the PKX says 240603. And this matches up with our ALM version. So it's pretty simple. All you got to do is hit download file and you're basically good to go. Now, every now and then, well, almost every single time, PKahex updates faster than ALM. So in the event that, let's say, PKahex is a lot newer compared to ALM, there's a way to get an older version of PKahex. So scroll down to where you see C changelog. And when you say C changelog, it's going to give you basically a drop down of all of the different older versions of PKahex that you can kind of download and match up with your ALM. Because again, ALM and PKahex do not update at the same time, but they do need to match if you want PKahex and ALM to actually work together. All right, so now we've got it downloaded. Go to your downloads folder or wherever your downloads go, and you're going to need to unblock DLLs. So for PKahex and the PKahex plugins, you're going to right click, hit properties, and where it says unblock, check that, hit apply, okay, and the exact same process for the plugins. Right click, properties, unblock, apply, okay. And then now you're going to extract the zips. So I don't know what extraction program you're using, but you just got to extract it. So I'm going to right click, extract all, extract, and you're going to take this PKahex exe and you're going to drop that into the PKahex folder that you made earlier. So go ahead and paste that here, paste, drop, whatever you need to do, just put the PKahex exe in there. So let's go back to my downloads, and we're going to extract the plugins. And you got the automod plugins.dll, and you're going to copy that. And let's go to my plugins folder inside of PKahex folder, and you're going to paste it. And now you got PKahex set up. So we can close that. And now we can go ahead and open up PKahex. Now, as long as everything you did correctly, you're going to start seeing these prompts. And this is basically asking me if I want to make a backup. Make a backup. Backup folder created. Okay. And boom. Now we've got PKahex open and we can go ahead and finally get started. All right, so first thing we're going to do is go to Tools, Autolegality Mod, and go to Plugin Settings. And these are just things I recommend doing. You don't have to do them, but I think they're good, like changes you can make for legality purposes and just overall aesthetics when using the ALM plugin. So we're going to go over to Prioritize Game. I suggest making that true. That basically means that when you generate a Pokemon, it is going to prioritize basically the game that you have it set in. Now we're going to go to set all legal ribbons. I suggest making this false. And this is mainly because ribbons and marks and stuff like that can get a little overboard and can be a little like visually like unappealing because you might generate a Pokemon and then it has like 30 ribbons. So I suggest making that false. And we're going to scroll down a little bit more. Allow home transfer generation. I suggest making this false. This basically stops Pokemon from being generated that would require a home tracker. And the reason why is because PKahex and ALM cannot create a home tracker. So despite what you may think, and you might think you can just type in a home tracker, that's not how home trackers work. So again, I highly suggest if you are going to create a Pokemon that needs a home tracker, that you generate it in the appropriate game, send it through home so it gets an actual home tracker, and then bring it into to Scarlet and Violet or whatever. Just make sure that you follow the proper route and you do this. So also, I suggest going to enable Easter eggs. We're going to set that to false. And the reason why is just for aesthetic purposes, because Easter eggs are basically something that happens when you import an illegal set. So instead of it just not creating it, Easter eggs will make like different little kind of like joke Pokemon in place of the illegal Pokemon. I just think that just set it to false. So let's scroll down. And yeah, that's pretty much all the little settings I suggest changing. And we are good to go to finally start importing things with the auto legality mod. All right, so for the most part, we're going to be using the import with auto legality mod button. And it's basically pretty self-explanatory. Tools, auto legality mod, import with auto legality mod. And it takes whatever information you provide called an import and creates a legal Pokemon from that. Now, how do we get these imports? The main way to get an import is via using Pokemon Showdown Teambuilder. And basically with Pokemon Showdown Team Builder, you will be able to pretty much just like make your own Pokemon. I'm not going to go over how to use Team Builder. It's all pretty self-explanatory and pretty much like self-guided. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to grab a Pokemon set from the Smogon Dex. So what you can do, like I did, go to Google, type in Smogon, and for this case, I'm going to use a zoom arrow and just go that, and it's going to pop up with the Smogon Dex. So for this guide, I'm using Scarlet and Violet. So I'm going to grab a Scarlet and Violet battle ready set. So scroll down. I'm just going to grab this Belling Drum set. Go ahead and copy it. Now let's go back to PKHex, Tools, Autolegality mod, import file legality mod. My import is right here. Click yes, and boom. Now I've got our legal set. And that's basically what the auto legality mod feature does when you import with it. There's a lot of other things, but for now, I'm going to kind of go over the different aspects of a Pokemon and kind of the legal implications that go with it when editing via PKahex. All right, so first we're going to start with the main tab and kind of go over all the legal implications here and go do the same thing with all the other tabs. So first, here, you can click this, make a Pokemon shiny. Obviously, not every single Pokemon can be shiny, and if it can't be shiny or any kind of legality change you make that makes something illegal, it's going to pop up here on the left-hand side, and it's going to have that triangle caution symbol. So the way this works is when you make something shiny, it's going to change the PID. So you have this reroll button over here, and rerolling the PID will also unshiny a Pokemon. And keep in mind, PID, TID, and SID are all connected. So let's make this shiny. Let's change this here. Species, you can kind of like don't really want to mess with that if a Pokemon is already pre-made. Nickname here, I'm going to change this to Bluey. And it already does the little check mark there for you, experience and level. Now these two are linked, so any change you make to experience is going to change the level. And also anything with level that you change is going to also affect legality. So let's say it might affect your moves and stuff like that, or your met locations, anything like that. So just keep that in mind of how level reflects on everything, because one change in one place can have a lot of implications to others. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your edit. So I'm going to change this back to level 100 just for simplicity's sake. Nature and stat nature. So I'm going to change this to jolly because that is possible. Now, let's say you want your nature and your stat nature to be the same. So if you want your nature to match your stat nature, you can go over here to the left-hand side and click on that. And if you want your stat nature to match your nature, go over to the left-hand side of stat nature and click that. So that's how that's easy. It's a little shortcut. So held item is just like Team Builder. It kind of like starts propagating stuff for you. So I got choice band, ability. It gives you the different choices. So I'm going to do thick, fat, friendship. I'd say leave that alone. Don't mess with this unless you know what you're doing. And the met tab. Now see, it gave me a little caution arrow, but that was just a little false flag. That sometimes happens when you make a lot of changes. So that's legal. Origin game. I suggest never touching this if you've already got a Pokemon pre-made. Battle version, leave that alone unless you're playing a game where that's relevant. Met location, leave that alone. Ball. Now click that. Now the stuff highlighted kind of in green, if you can see it, those are going to be balls that are legal for this encounter. The stuff that's highlighted in red are going to be illegal. Pretty straightforward. Met date, you can change that. Met level, leave that alone. Obedience level, leave that alone. Fateful encounter, you're only going to see that checked if it's an event Pokemon and stuff like that. As egg, that basically means that this Pokemon started as an egg encounter. Don't mess with that. Location picnic, don't mess with that. Date, you can change that. Now let's go to stats. Stats here. And basically, I mean, depending on the Pokemon, they may have locked IVs and stuff like that. So just kind of keep that in mind. But if you ever need to hyper train a Pokemon, what you do, go into the IV stat, shift, click, and if it's green like this, that basically means that this stat is hyper trained. And the way this works, it's not going to let you type anything over. So I'm going to try to type 45, and it automatically changed to 31. That's the little failsafe that PKahex has built in. Let's go to EVs. EVs, let's try to add another 50 EVs. It did, but it's red down here, and that indicates it's legal. Now let's see what it says over here on the side. It's not even letting me like change anything. So let's go to 0, and now my Pokemon is still legal. Let's double check this. Still legal. Original Terra type. I suggest never touching this. Never touch your original Terra type. Only mess with the override Terra type. So you can go over here. Let's make this thing. Let's do Stellar. And the reason why I say this is because your original Terra type is tied to when it hatches or the base encounter. Your override Terra type is what can actually be changed and seen in battle. So really only need to actually mess with the override Terra type. Now you've got randomized IVs here, randomized EVs here. You can kind of mess around with those. Just understand any kind of legality implications with the randomized IVs. Now moves. This is where I'm going to show you a cool little trick. So moves. Let's go and let's think about waterfall. Now Azumarill can learn waterfall, but it's got this flag over here. Let's see what it says. It says invalid move, one invalid move. So how do we fix that? And that's because in Scarlet and Violet, waterfall for Azumarill is a TR. So how do we give it these TRs? And you're going to find these here in the relearn flag section. Now see, everything you see here highlighted green is going to be a TR that Azumarill can have. So what I'll do is instead of scrolling down and finding waterfall amongst this like large list, you can click give all, and that'll basically give it all the TR flags. That way, any other TR that you try to put in here, it's going to automatically be legal for this Pokemon, and you don't have to go back and do that. Now, alternatively, you could have done tools, Autolegality mod, and legalize active Pokemon, and that would have cleared that up as well. And you got relearn moves down here. I suggest leaving these alone. Cosmetic, basically, that's your shiny. Those are your little marks that get made when you generate a Pokemon. These are the little symbols for like origin and stuff like that. And you've got height, weight, scalar. You can change these, but I suggest not changing them unless you know what might happen. Because let's say you're trying to make a the jumbo ribbon. Jumbo ribbon, I think, is like max in all these different things. However, those are for specific encounters. You can't just freely change it. Just got to keep that in mind. Now go over here to ribbons. Any ribbon that this Pokemon can legally have right now will be highlighted in green. So anything else is going to be basically unchecked, unhighlighted. So you can mess with those if you want to, but understand that these are the only ones possible as the Pokemon is right now. So I'm going to save that. Memories. Memories are basically right here. I suggest leaving memories alone. You can look at them, but don't really mess with them too much. Now let's go to OT. Now this is where I'm going to show you something a little bit further later on in the video to kind of expand when it comes to your trainer info. Because you see here, when I generated the Pokemon, it generated with the PKahex trainer info. But I'm going to show you all right after this how to generate a Pokemon with custom trainer data. But basically, if brief little overview is your SID, TID, and your PID are connected like I mentioned earlier. So let's change this to 56. And you notice now your Azumarill is unshiny because all of those factors are connected in determining how your Pokemon is shiny. They're all connected. OT, some OTs are illegal, but for the most part, your OT you can pretty much like change to whatever you want. That is legally possible in the game. Latest OT handler, I suggest don't mess with this unless you know what you're doing. Home tracker, don't touch this. If the Pokemon that you generate, well, you can't generate a Pokemon for home tracker in the first place because home trackers are created by Pokemon Home. But if you bring over a Pokemon file that has a home tracker, I suggest leaving that alone and understand if something has a home tracker, honestly, you shouldn't be editing in PKahex because that home tracker is tied to that Pokemon exactly how it is when it comes to immutable data. So if you change like some IVs or you change like the base nature, that is going to mess up your home tracker in terms of it being valid. So understand that. Encryption constant, I suggest don't really mess with this unless like let's say you have like clones or something and you want to have like a different like kind of like thing to distinguish it, you can re-roll it. But for some Pokemon, the encryption constant is tied to the overall legality. So that's basically all the different tabs and all the kind of different legality implications. Obviously, there is going to be a little bit more in regards to each different thing, but I gave you a basic surface overview. All right, so now I'm going to show y'all how to make a Pokemon get generated with custom trainer data. So the way custom trainer data works, and I'm going to have the link to the wiki in the description as well, that kind of goes more in depth, is it you make a folder called a trainers folder. So you're going to go to your PKahex folder, and you're going to make another folder titled trainers. And basically, inside of this trainers folder, you're going to have a bunch of different Pokemon files for every single game with the trainer data on that file that you would like PKahex to pull from. So let's go ahead and close this and go back to PKahex. So I've got this zoom arrow here. And for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to go through and do every single game, but you do need to have a file for every game. So let's go over here and let's go and see. This is going to be a Pokemon for Scarlet. So I'm going to OT info and I'm going to make a custom data for myself. So Larry Bud, I'm going to just do 1981. And now I've got this ready. So this is going to be my Scarlet custom data. So go ahead and drag this to your desktop or wherever. And you're going to close PKX. You don't need to worry about saving or not. Go ahead and close that. And I'm going to drag this file into that trainers folder that I just made. So drag that in there. So go ahead and close that. And now let's reopen PKX. Let it load up. And now let's go back to the Smogon Dex. And I'm going to use that same set from earlier. So close that. Go to Tools, Autolegality mod, Import with Autolegality mod. Click Yes. And boom, there's my trainer data for what I made earlier. And so again, you're going to need a file for every single game. So if you plan on doing like Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield, you're going to need a Sword file, a Shield file, a Scarlet file, and a Violet file. Otherwise, it's just going to pull the default trainer data. So let's close this. And another little tip to do is to, when you're in your trainer folder, just nickname the file the game. That way it's easier for you to sort and easier for you to kind of like find everything. So I've got it set here. I've got it nicknamed to Scarlet. So that's basically how you make custom trainer data. Again, it's pretty tedious, but it's a lot better than having it set to PKhex. All right, so next I'm going to show y'all how to use the encounter database. And the encounter database is basically, as the name implies, it is a database within PKX that contains all of the legal encounters for different Pokemon. So it's pretty straightforward and it's very efficient. I suggest using this if, like, let's say you can't make the Pokemon via ALM for some reason, or you want to have a legal template to build upon. Use the encounter database to get your template as opposed to just trying to make it from scratch. So you go to Tools, Data, Encounter Database, and you got this little part over here. You can get pretty specific with this, but I'm just going to be pretty broad and be very generic just for this example. So we're going to do Charizard. And you can't see it on the screen, but at the bottom there's a search button. Hit search, and boom. Now you're probably wondering, like, okay, if you did Charizard, why am I seeing Charmeleons? And that's because it gets basically the lowest base encounter for it. So you got to think about it like this. Charizard starts as Charmander. So if you had a Charizard that, let's say, you raised from the egg, the lowest possible encounter for that is going to be a Charmander egg. Or, for example, like this one, where it says encounter type egg Charmander. However, you do see some that are just straight up Charizard, and that's because these are events right here, and these are raids. Because you have to think about it like this. This event for this Charizard can never be a Charmander or a Charmeleon and be legal because the event is locked to just that, and that's the base encounter for it. Hopefully that makes sense. And so it's the encounter database is pretty straightforward and it's organized great. It's basically organized by game. So you got Violet here. Go over here. You got Shiny Pearl. Let's see right here, still Shining Pearl, and that just kind of shows you definitely like how many encounters are in for a certain Pokemon. And you got to think about like this, like Charizard has been around since Gen 1. It's got a lot of encounters. Right here, this is Rapogo, and you see some Charmeleons because you can catch a Charmeleon in Pogo and stuff like that. Scroll down even more, and what's this? This is Sapphire. Like it's pretty good, and like I said, I highly suggest using the encounter database to get your legal templates to build upon, as opposed to making a Pokemon from scratch. All right, so next I'm going to show y'all how to use the Generate Living Dex feature in ALM, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It just generates a Living Dex. So let's go to Tools, Autolegality Mod, and you're going to see Generate Living Dex here, but you're going to go down to Plugin Settings. And when you go to Plugin Settings, you're going to see the Living Dex settings here as well, because these things you can change them to kind of like determine the criteria for your Living Dex essentially. That way, I mean, like it's a bunch of different combinations and stuff you can do. But basically, you've got include forms. Include forms is basically it includes all the forms of a Pokemon. So think about something like Meowth. Meowth, you have regular Meowth from Kanto, you've got Meowth Galar, and you've got Meowth from Alola. And then basically, this ensures that your Living Dex is going to have all of these forms as long as everything went right. So we're going to make that true. And we've got native only. Native only basically means it's only going to make Pokemon that can be encountered within the game that you have PKahex set to. So, for example, if you have your PKahex set to Violet, you're only going to get encounters that can be possible in Violet. This doesn't include things that can come over via like home transfer only, because technically those aren't being encountered within the game and therefore are not native. Next, set alpha, that only really applies to PLA, and we're doing Scarlet and Violet here, but basically that just makes it where you're going to have alphas in your Living Dex. And then set shiny. Set shiny basically means it's going to make a shiny Living Dex, but it is going to be bound to the other parameters that you set. So think of set shiny and native only at the same time. Think of something like Zapdos, Moltres, and Articuno. If you think about it, currently in Scarlet and Violet, you can encounter them. They are going to be native, but only non-shiny. So when you have something like this happens, it's going, since it can't be shiny, it's going to basically still do them, but going to be non-shiny. Now, if you had native only set to false, it will basically pull these shiny encounters from whatever game that it can be encountered in. So for this Living Dex example, I'm going to show y'all, we're going to do include forms, native only, and shiny Living Dex. So close that, go back, tools, auto legality mod, and generate Living Dex. It's going to ask you like generate Living Dex, hit yes, and just got to kind of wait for it to go. Now this is going to be determined by your laptop speed and power, whatever, and just it's a lot that goes into it with encounters, because you got to think about this is a Living Dex, so it's not going to be something that just like gets made instantly. Usually takes like, okay, well there it is. And so now we're going to look at a few things that will kind of show you how the Living Dex works. And so let's look for our forms. Look, you got Sandshrew Alola, and you got Sandshrew Kanto. You've got Vulpix Lola, and I'm not Vulpix, Ninepix Lola, and Ninetales Kanto. Now let's go find those Meowths from earlier. Meowth Galar, Meowth Alola, and Meowth Kanto. So looks like we do have forms in there. So now I'm going to show y'all the example that I mentioned about Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. And as you see here, they are non-shiny. Why? Because you cannot encounter them natively shiny. So it just kind of omitted that. And this again is just a basic shiny Living Dex, well, just basic Living Dex in general. So it's not battle ready. If you look at some of the Pokemon, that's Quirky Nature, that's Gentle. It just kind of randomizes it and it makes them all, I believe they should all be 6 IVs. Unless, let's say, it's like an event or like a legendary that's generating. Those will be like basically bound to the IVs that they come with. Like I said, they're all gonna be legal, and this is a great way if you want to have a Living Dex that you can kind of build upon. Because basically with all of these, you can use these as templates and build onto them as long as you're still within like legal boundaries and stuff like that. But that's basically the generate Living Dex feature. All right, so next I'm going to show y'all how to do the generate Smogon Sets feature within ALM, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It takes whatever Pokemon you have right here, and it's going to pull Smogon Sets for that Pokemon. So if you're unfamiliar with Smogon Sets, basically it's the Smogon Dex, which houses a lot of different competitively viable Pokemon here, and it has different sets for different games and stuff like that. And keep in mind, like I said, competitively viable. So not every Pokemon is going to have a set here, and also not everything is going to be added instantly. So let's say the meta is changing, it might not have sets that reflect the new changes in the meta, or like let's say a new game or a new Pokemon got introduced, those don't get there instantaneously. So just really keep that in mind in case you see something that might look a little too old, or you see something that is not really current. And basically, the Smogon Dex, like I said, it keeps for different generations. Like for this Urshifu, you've got Sword and Shield, got Scarlet and Violet, and you've got all these different formats, Ubers, VGC, etc., etc. And the way the generate Smogon Sets works is based on whatever your PKahex is set to, it's going to pull these Smogon Sets for that generation. So, and like I said before, it's going to pull from the Pokemon that is right here. And the way you change that is going to the species name up here. I'm going to change that to Urshifu. Now, if it's something with forms, obviously you need to check the form and make it whichever one you want. And you can ignore that this sign says illegal up here because all this is doing is just giving ALM something to pull from. So go Tools, Autolegality mod, generate Smogon Sets. It's going to pop up here for the alert. 14 sets generated for Urshifu. Click OK, and boom. Now you got a bunch of different battle ready Urshifus for you to tweak with and just do whatever you want. Now I'm going to do another example with a Charizard because there is an issue that you may run into occasionally, and that's with if a Pokemon has National Dex sets. And National Dex, if you're unfamiliar, National Dex basically has everything. Like every single Pokemon is there. I think it's like almost every single move set is like possible, and it's not like limited to the different like games and stuff like that. And it also has stuff like Z moves, megas, everything is there. And so when it comes to national deck sets, when they get imported, they're a lot of times going to pop up illegal because they might not be compatible with the game that you're using. So let's go back. Let's change this to Charizard. So tools, auto legality mod, and generate Smogon Sets. And now you get the ALM error. And that basically is telling you like, hey, something popped up illegal. I'm going to click cancel. 6 sets generated, and boom. Now if you had like enable Easter eggs set to yes, you would have had illegal sets pop up down here. And also every now and then one might pass through that it shouldn't. Okay, you see you got the Charizard here, and you can just right click and delete it. But yeah, that's basically how the generate Smogon Sets feature works. And it's pretty good if you're like kind of having a hard time thinking of a battle ready set. And they're all right there for you at just a few clicks. All right, so next I'm going to show y'all how to make eggs using the encounter database. So go tools, data, encounter database. And the reason why we're using the encounter database is because the encounter database has egg encounters, and also because making eggs through ALM is a lot more tedious as opposed to doing this. So we're going to use Torchic for the example. So go ahead and type up here Torchic, boom, and you're going to press the search bar at the bottom and make sure that the encounter you grab has an egg next to it. That way you know it's an egg encounter. And another thing, remember, we are doing Scarlet and Violet. So everything I show you in this little egg guide only really applies to Scarlet and Violet because there's different egg mechanics in different games. So this may not work if you try to apply it to other games. So just keep that in mind. And also, my save file is set to Scarlet right now. You notice here you got a game version Violet egg and a game version Scarlet egg. Make sure that the game versions match up. And the reason why is because it can run into handler issues and it'll get flagged as illegal because basically you have an egg that is set to be in Violet in your game, but you're in Scarlet right now, but it's apparently came from you. You get what I'm saying? That doesn't make sense. So I'm going to show you what happens. So I'm going to hit view, and you notice here You might have not noticed it that it changed over here, but it's still marked as illegal, and that's the violet, but my save file is set to scarlet. So I'm going to go over to the scarlet one, right click view, and you notice now it's legal. So we got our torchic, and now we can make our egg. And you notice it is not set to an actual egg. So what you're going to do, you're going to scroll down to here, is egg, check that, see if this is illegal or not. It's valid, legal, okay. And basically now you have your egg that you are pretty much free to edit, but you can only do obviously things that are legal for eggs. So I'm going to make this shiny. I'm going to change it to a boy. Obviously, can't mess with experience or level for eggs. Nature, you can change the nature, but just keep in mind that for an egg, nature and stat nature need to match up, and I'll show you how. So adamant automatically gets flagged illegal. So go over here, make sure those match up. Can't do an item, obviously. Ability, we're gonna make this boy fast. Don't touch anything down here. Now we're at our Met tab. Only thing here that you should touch really is the ball, the date here, and the date here. Everything else, do not touch. So we're gonna change the ball. This is going to be a fast ball. We want this man to be fast. Make sure it's still legal. Still legal. I'm going to change the date to today. Go to stats. Stats, like I said, it's an egg, so you can kind of freely change it. Do what you want. Obviously, since it's an egg, it cannot have EVs, so don't mess with the EVs. Now, obviously, Torchic is only fire, no dual typing. However, some Pokemon do have dual typing and stuff like that, but I highly suggest don't mess with the original Terra type. Don't ever mess with that making eggs. Just save yourself the headache and any kind of potential mistakes and just leave it alone. So, next, moves. Now, moves is where it gets a little bit more tricky because you've got egg moves and you got its base moves, and the order of these moves has to match up perfectly. So, let's go to Cerebi. I got it open already. And you're going to scroll down to egg moves. Now I got a list of different egg moves I can use. Also, make sure that you are in the right generation. Now let's go to egg moves. All right, so I got all my egg moves here. I'm going to give it Peck, Counter, Crush, Claw, and Faint. So let's go back. So Peck, Counter, and notice these are getting flagged as illegal. And I'm going to show you how to clear that up. And Faint. And that's because your current moves and your relearn moves need to match up. So what you can do, easy little trick, instead of like retyping them, is go in here and just click inside the box. It's going to pop up here. It matches up. Hit yes. Still legal. Yes, it is. And boom, that's how the moves work. Now, there are going to be instances where it gets a little bit trickier, where let's say you cannot have Peck and Counter back to back like this. It needs to be in a different slot. Some Pokemon do work like that. It's annoying. It'll take a lot of like guess and check and like kind of like messing around with it to get it perfect. But yeah, that's basically how the current moves and the relearn moves work for if you want your egg to hatch of egg moves. And that's basically how you make eggs. That's all you really need to do. It's pretty simple, and you're basically good to go from here. All right, so to close the video, I'm going to go over briefly some of the things that I didn't address earlier in the video because there are a lot of like kind of smaller things that just didn't like deserve their own section, but I feel should still be addressed. So let's start here. Let's go tools, Autolegality mod, export box to ALM Showdown template. Basically, as the name implies, it is going to take the box you're on and it's going to create a massive Showdown import for that box. Open Live Hex. This is only really going to apply if you have a Hack 3DS or a Hack Switch, and this will allow you to connect directly from PKahex to those devices instead of having to upload your save file onto PKahex. Download MGDB. MGDB stands for Mystery Gift Database, and this allows you to pretty much download the entire Mystery Gift Database, which is a database containing all of the events. So you're going to get every single event, whether it's going to be a Wonder Card or a straight up like Pokemon file. All of those are going to be in a folder within PKahex. So Next is transfer Living Dex. Transfer Living Dex, as the name implies, it is going to create a transfer Living Dex for you. Generate from URL. Generate from URL, basically, if you have, like, let's say a team on a PokePaste, it's going to take that PokePaste and create a legal team from that and generate from it. Next, we're going to go to Showdown. These are all pretty self-explanatory, but import set from clipboard, basically, if you have a set already like copied on your clipboard, it's going to import it, and it's going to import it right here, and it's not going to go through like ALM, so it's just going to copy directly on top of whatever is already there, so it's probably going to be illegal for the most part. Export set to clipboard, it's going to take whatever Pokemon right here, and it's going to create an import from it. Export party, same thing, it's going to take your party, create an import for that. Export current box, it's going to basically take your box, create import for that. Next, we're going to go to data, load boxes. Basically, it's going to take wherever you have them at, like a bunch of files. It's going to take all those files that you select and open them within PKahex. Dump boxes is basically inverse of load. It's going to take whatever box or boxes you select in PKahex and dump those files into a folder wherever you want. Batch editor. Batch editor is probably one of the things on PKahex with the highest learning curve. It basically, you can take and do a lot of mass editing. And whenever you do a lot of mass editing, there can be a lot of legality issues. And there's a lot that goes into it because there's a lot of different things that you can edit with the batch editor. I'm not going to go over it, but I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. Next, we're going to go to options, language, pretty self-explanatory, settings. All of these are different little things you can kind of like look over and mess around with, but the most important one is the blank save version. That is basically how you change the different versions your PKahex is set to if you don't have a save file uploaded. And then next, back to options, about PKahex. This is going to be a bunch of different shortcuts for you. And shortcuts with any program are going to make your life a lot easier and make you using PKahex a lot more efficient. So like I said, there's a lot. Next, we're going to go to box. Now, when you right click this, it's going to give you a drop down of different things you can do, like delete, you can clear, foreign, illegal, sort boxes, give you a bunch of different options, sort box advanced, a bunch of different options, modify. It's pretty convenient. And yeah, that's basically everything within PKahex. I might have missed over a few things or skipped a few things just because I feel like they aren't going to be very common for the common PKahex user. But yeah, hopefully this guide helps y'all to not only use ALM, but PKahex as a whole. And if you have any questions, let me know in the description, but also make sure to like and also share the video.